Hi there, and welcome to this video series where I'll be searching for the best trading strategy for cryptocurrency trading. In each video I'm going to test a strategy that is explained in a YouTube video, trading site, or is publicly available for use. Each strategy will be tested on its performance by trading multiple digital asset pairs over the largest possible backtest period. The result of this test is then compared with the results of earlier tested strategies. If you like these videos and you want to see more of them, then please click on the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you want to get notified on my newest content, then click on the bell icon, and it will also help the YouTube algorithm. Now please remember that this video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Everything you see here is hypothetical and based on historic data, so there's no guarantee the investigated strategy will work in the future. I'm also not a professional, so always do your own research or consult a professional before using any information in real trading. In the coming videos I will test the strategies that were made or gathered by a Freqtrade strategy developer that goes by the names of Berlin Guy in CA. He has a directory in the Freqtrade GitHub repository for strategies, and this strategy is also available over there. I have tested some of his strategies earlier and decided to test all of his strategies to see if one of them provides the best profit against the lowest risk. And in this video I'm going to test the TD Sequential strategy. The code actually was created by bmookalf, if I say his name correctly, so all credits go to him for providing us with this script. The strategy itself was originally created by Tom Demark, and that's what the TD in TD Sequential stands for. I will leave a link in the description below for more information about the strategy. Now, the TD Sequential is quite an interesting strategy, which is also a little bit complex if you see it the first time. Without going into much detail, I will try to explain this as simple as possible and in my own words. If you want more information or a more detailed and maybe better explanation, I suggest you do your own Google research, which is always a good thing, do your own research. Now, what the TD Sequential does is counting candles and the position they closed in comparison with the previous candles. It tries to determine reversals in a trend and thereby give you clues or signals to take your trades on. There is documentation that states that this tool is also especially useful in ranging markets to enter long and short positions, and also that this indicator is useful on all time frames. The strategy itself has two phases, a setup phase and a countdown phase. I will only explain the bullish setup here because the bearish setup is exactly the same, instead everything is reversed. The setup phase starts with the first candle when this candle closes higher than the candle of the last 4 periods ago. This candle is then marked with 1. If the second candle in the setup phase also closes higher than the candle 4 periods ago, then this candle is marked with 2. And if the third candle also closes higher than the candle 4 periods ago, this is marked with 3, and so on and so on. And if during this phase one candle closes below the candle 4 days ago, then the setup has failed and you have to start all over again. Now, when the 9th candle is marked, then the setup phase is finished and the first signal is given. And at that time you should be cautious of a reversal of the trend. Also, after this 9th candle, the second phase starts, and that's the countdown phase. Also, when the 9th candle of the setup phase is closed, then this will become the first candle of the countdown phase. And this phase consists of 13 candles. There is also a difference in the way the candles of this phase are counted. Instead of looking at the candle from 4 days ago to count as a higher candle, it looks at the candle of 2 days ago. So every time a candle closes higher than the one 2 days ago, this will be counted as the countdown phase candle. Another difference is that these candles do not necessarily have to be sequential. In other words, there can be candles in between that close lower than the candle of 1 or 2 days ago. The final and 13th candle should close above the 8th candle in order for the sequence to finish. If this is not the case, then the countdown phase remains until this is true. Another way that ends this countdown phase is when a bearish setup of the TD Sequential is finished. But if this does not happen, and when the countdown phase is finished, then a strong signal is given that the market could reverse, and you should take this into consideration when determining your next trade. The last thing I'd like to point out is that during the countdown phase, a new setup phase can also start. This could be a signal that the market is not ready to reverse yet and will trend even further. But you should always stay aware of support and resistance at these levels, so be careful when reacting to these signals. Let's take a look at the code and compare this with the TD Sequential description. Immediately you see that the author has made a description of what this code roughly does, so this is a good starting point to know how the script will work. According to this description, the buy trigger will occur when there are 9 consecutive lower lows than the 4 bars prior, and also bars 8 and 9 should be lower than bars 6 and 7. And the sell signal is the reverse of the buy signal, so when there are 9 consecutive candles higher than the close of the candles prior, and candles 8 and 9 close higher than candles 6 and 7, then apparently this strategy will sell. If we start at the back of the code, we see that the first action in the buy signal trend is that it sets the data frame buy field to 0, probably to reset this field before setting it to 3 lines below. The same thing also happens at the sell function. First the sell field is set to 0 before the actual sell signal is given. Then at the buy function there are 2 conditions that have to be met. The field exceed low should be true, and also the field sec buy should be higher than 8. And the same thing happens at the sell signal. The exceed high field should be true and the sec sell should be over 8 before a sell signal is given. Now, what determines the exceed low field and what the sec buy field? For that we have to move a little bit up to see the code of the populate indicators function. And also I'm going to try something new in this video. I'm going to copy this code into a Google Colab notebook to show you what actually happens in the data frame when using this code. Now I already have imported all the necessary code into the notebook, so I only have to execute this and show you what happens with certain pieces of code. The first thing I have to do is import pandas in this notebook, so that I can create a data frame where the JSON data of Bitcoin will be imported. Then I am going to upload a JSON file with Bitcoin data on the daily time frame. For this I am going to use the import files function from the Google Colab library. Next I will create a data frame from this file and give the columns their correct names. Also I am going to change the time format in the JSON file to human readable form with this command. Optionally I can change the index to the date, but for this time I will skip this, but I will leave it here for reference. With the data frame info command I get a small overview of the data, how many rows there are, column names and data types. With the data frame command you see the actual data frame. Here you see the first and last 5 rows of the data frame. The next thing I did is enter the first code of the actual strategy file here. These are the exceed high and low columns, and again I'll show you the data frame itself. And here you see that these 2 columns are added with the default value of false. Then there will be a little bit more of complex code here to determine if the current candle close is lower than the close of the candle 4 periods ago. This first section determines if the current close field is lower than the close of the field of 4 periods of candles earlier. Then this section counts the amount of times this sec buy field is true and cumulatively counts this and returns this to the field so that it acts like a counter. Here you see that the sec buy and sec sell column are added and the counter in this column gets higher when the close of the current row is higher than the close of 4 rows before. When the current close is not higher than the close of 4 candles ago, then the counter will be reset and starts counting again when the condition is met. The next section here is a Python for statement. Again, I'm not going too much into detail, but what this section actually does is check each row in the data frame and then does the following stuff. First it creates the variable secb and inserts the data from the secbuy field from that current row into that variable. Then it checks the content of the variable if it's equal to 8 or greater than 8 or equal to 9. If one of these checks is valid, then it adds a true value to the exceed high field. Anyway, again I will show you the data frame and note that every time the counter hits 8 or higher in the sec buy or sec sell column, the corresponding exceed high and low values are set to true. Now the following cell in this notebook consists of the buy trend function, and next we put the data frame into this function to see the output. The The buy trend will create a sell buy in the data frame, and by default it will receive the 0 from this line. Then the actual log function looks for the condition where the exceed low field is equal to true and the sec buy field is higher than 8, so 9 or higher. If that's the case, then the bot receives a buy trigger, which is stated by 1. And these conditions are almost the same in the sell trend function, so I will just execute the code of this function here. So finally, in this cell you see the final data frame of all code and functions. Now you can clearly see what happens when all this code runs in your bot. As stated, in the buy function, every time the field exceeds low is equal to true and the sec buy field is 9 or higher, then the buy trigger gets a 1 and the bot will buy into a position. Also in the sell trend function, every time the field exceed high is true and the sec sell field is 9 or higher, then the sell field gets a 1 and does a sell order. And so basically this is the whole deal of this strategy script. With the knowledge of how the TD Sequential works, we can now conclude that this strategy file only looks at the setup phase of the TD Sequential strategy and not the countdown phase. And so the strategy file expects that after each 9 candles a reversal will take place and will buy after the 9th low candle. Then it will hold until the 9th highest TD Sequential and close the position. Now I almost forgot that the strategy file itself also has some other parameter settings, so let's see them as well. Here you can see that the ROI settings will sell at 50% take profit. And here the stop loss is a tight 5%, so when the price drops another 5% after buy, then it will sell the position again. And as you can see, there is no trailing stop loss set. Also, the default time frame of the strategy is the 1 hour time frame. And it will start the strategy only after 30 candles have been passed after startup. So now that we know all this, let's start with the initial backtest to see which time frame proves to be the best one for this strategy file. According to the backtest, over all the available time periods I have the following results. The best time frame is, again, the 1 day time frame, with a total profit of this strategy of 79%. Also, this strategy has a drawdown of 757%, which is quite large, and the win rate is only a meager 14%. The risk of ruin, I'm not going to mention it, it's just high. Now let me first say that the results of this backtest were somewhat expected, as I personally found the stop loss setting of only 5% a little bit tight. And you can also see for yourself from the backtest results that the stop loss setting is the main cause of these sells. Luckily, the sell signal of the strategy has a high enough profit to still make some money, but the drawdown and risk of ruin are so high that I personally would not use this strategy. Nonetheless, I will do a Hyperopt session on the ROI and stop loss setting to find out if this strategy can be improved on these settings and by how much. Again, something interesting occurred after the Hyperopt session and backtesting this result. I expected a change in the stop loss setting, and to be honest, I thought that this stop loss space would be bigger, but instead the Hyperopt session calculated it would be better to tighten the stop loss space even more, to only 3% loss after a trade occurs. This means that the trade would be stopped out even quicker, but also that the stop would save another 2% of funds if it proved to be a bad trade. The ROI setting that originally would take profit after 50% gains was optimized so that it would take profits earlier, and therefore is the biggest optimization of this Hyperopt session. Overall, the amount of trades went up, but this did not improve the win rate. It became even worse, even though the ROI setting is taking profit earlier. So this time I will not waste any more time analyzing this and move directly to the overall strategy leak. But before I do that, I quickly want to inform you about the way I do these tests. In this overview I have written down the setup for these tests and also the method I try to find the best strategy. This is the way I do these backtests to find the most profitable strategy, and you can always use this as an inspiration to develop your own methodology. I always strongly recommend you to do your own research after watching my video, develop your own way of testing and get confidence in your own methodology. And make sure you always forward test a strategy before using it in actual real life trading. I have made this mistake by doing this and have lost money by doing so, and this is my experience. So with this out of the way, let's see how this TD Sequential strategy performs in comparison with my earlier tests. And it might not be a surprise to you, but this strategy performed the worst of all. Not only is the profit small, it also has a huge amount of risks because of the amount of losing trades is way more than the amount of winning trades. The drawdown is better than some earlier tested strategies, but this is the only thing that seems to be positive about this implementation of the TD Sequential strategy. Nonetheless, I have learned something new from the code that was provided. And using Google Colab is also something that could be repeated with the analysis of more complicated strategies in the future. I hope you enjoyed this explanation as well and that you have learned something from this video. So, thank you for watching, and as always I want to ask you to please click on the like button if you like this video. Also click on the bell icon if you want to get notified on my newest videos, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done already so. And I will see you in my next video. Goodbye!